You know that brilliant idea bouncing around in your head? Have you ever dreamed of turning it into a thriving empire? Building a business from scratch is honestly one of the most exciting journeys you can possibly embark on. But listen, the very first step actually isn't about what you sell or who you market to. It's about your structural foundation. So welcome to This Explainer. Today we're going to unpack the entrepreneur's roadmap, step by step, diving into the exact legal and operational frameworks that actually bring businesses to life.
Okay, let's map out our roadmap for today. We'll be hitting 1, the one-person business, 2, the pros and cons, 3, the legal framework, 4, single-member companies, and finally, number 5, the power of partnerships.
All right, let's start at the very beginning. Section 1, the one-person business. Want to be your own boss? I mean, it's a powerful question, isn't it? For so many of us, the ultimate dream is absolute independence. You know, calling the shots, setting your own hours, and building something from the ground up that is entirely yours. Well, if that's your goal, you're going to want to pay close attention because we're looking at the absolute most accessible way to make that happen.
And that brings us to the sole proprietorship. By definition, this is simply a business owned and operated by one individual. But here is the absolutely critical point you need to understand. In the eyes of the law, there is zero legal separation between the owner and the business. Basically, you are the business and the business is you. Just think about this staggering number for a second, 90%. In developing economies like Pakistan, over 90% of all businesses operate as sole proprietorships. It is literally the backbone of the economy. It reduces unemployment, fuels informal sector growth, and gives young folks and low-income groups a totally frictionless, direct path right into entrepreneurship. And this framework covers a massive scope. We aren't just talking about one specific corporate niche here. This includes your corner grocery store, the neighborhood tailor, small-scale bakers, all the way up to freelance graphic designers and home-based e-commerce sellers on platforms like Daraz. If you're starting out with low investment, this is exactly where you live. But look, every foundational structure has its trade-offs. Let's move into Section 2, the pros and cons. Let's kick things off with the pros, because there's a reason so many people choose this path. For starters, it is incredibly easy to set up with barely any legal red tape. You are the undisputed captain of the ship with 100% control. And the absolute best part, you keep every single cent of the profits. Plus, your business income is just taxed as personal income, which usually means lower taxes and no massive corporate filings to worry about. You can pivot your strategy on a dime, keep your overhead super low, and since your financials aren't public, you get total confidentiality. Honestly, it sounds pretty perfect, right?
Well, we have to talk about the flip side because it is a big one. The single biggest risk you take on as a sole proprietor is called unlimited liability. Because you and the business are legally the exact same entity, you are personally on the hook for all debts and losses. If the business goes under or gets sued, creditors can legally come after your personal assets. We're talking about your life savings, your car, maybe even your house being seized to pay off those business debts. It's a terrifying reality, and it definitely shatters that illusion of total safety.
And beyond that unlimited liability, you're going to hit some serious growth ceilings. Raising capital? It's really tough because banks and investors usually don't want to fund businesses without a formal corporate structure or solid collateral. There's also a fundamental lack of continuity. Think about it. If you retire, get sick, or pass away, the business technically just ends. Plus, you're just one person. Imagine trying to be the CEO, the marketing director, and the lead accountant all at once. It makes expanding beyond a certain point really, really difficult.
So, how does this actually play out legally? Let's check out Section 3, the legal framework.
The real beauty of this setup is its practical simplicity. While sole proprietorships aren't governed by one giant, specific, separate law like big corporations are, they do operate under general laws, like the Income Tax Ordinance of 2001. Getting started basically comes down to 3 easy steps. First, you register with the Federal Board of Revenue, the FBR, for your taxes. Second, you grab a trade license from your local government. And third, if you're selling goods or certain services, you just register for sales or service tax with your provincial authority. And that's it. Boom, you're legally in business. But as your business starts to grow, that unlimited liability we talked about gets super heavy. Time to level up. Section 4, single-member companies. Enter the single-member company, or SMC. This is a private limited company formed and operated by just one person, you. But here's the game changer. It is legally separate from its owner. In Pakistan, this highly effective structure is governed by the Companies Act of 2017 and overseen by the Securities and Exchange Commission of Pakistan, the SECP. Basically, it acts as your ultimate corporate shield. Notice the stark contrast here. With a sole proprietorship, you've got zero legal separation, leaving you totally exposed with unlimited personal liability. But the single-member company, it builds a literal wall between you and the business, granting you limited liability. That means your personal risk is strictly capped at whatever money you specifically invested into the business. Your house, your personal savings, they are finally legally protected. Of course, with great protection comes a little bit more paperwork. You're now officially recognized as the sole director and shareholder, but you do have to register with the SECP. This means filing formalized documents, specifically a memorandum and articles of association. You're also strictly required to appoint a nominee. That's someone who legally takes over the company if something happens to you. And that brilliantly solves the whole continuity problem we saw with the sole proprietorship. So if you're ready to lock in that limited liability, the registration is highly structured. First, you hop onto the SMCTP's e-services portal to see if the company name you want is actually available. Second, you formally file your MOA and AOA. Finally, you submit your CNIC, your national ID, along with your nominee's CNIC and the details of your paid-up capital. Once you're approved, you instantly gain massive credibility with banks and investors, which makes scaling up so much easier. But hey, what if your grand ambition requires more resources, more money, and more diverse skills than one person can possibly provide? That brings us to Section 5, the power of partnerships. A partnership is the classic next stage on the entrepreneur's roadmap. This is a structure where two or more individuals team up to share ownership, responsibilities, profits, and, liabilities. Governed by the Partnership Act of 1932, this is your absolute go-to vehicle when you need to combine forces, pulling together different skill sets and larger chunks of capital to really scale things up. And you've actually got a lot of strategic flexibility here. You aren't just boxed into one model. You could form a general partnership where everyone has equal duties and shared liability across the board. Or you could opt for a limited partnership. That one's perfect if you have a passive investor, like, say, an uncle who just wants to throw in some cash but doesn't want to deal with the day-to-day operations. There's also the partnership at will, which is super flexible because it can be dissolved at any time as long as everyone agrees. So, why do this instead of going solo? Well, teaming up is a total powerhouse move. You instantly inject more capital into the business and drastically increase your borrowing power with banks. Plus, you get combined expertise. Maybe you're an absolute genius at product design, but your partner is a marketing wizard. Responsibilities get shared, which takes a ton of weight off your shoulders, yet decision-making is still pretty quick compared to some giant faceless corporation. And the kicker? You still get the tax benefits of having the income taxed at the individual level. To formally cement this alliance, the legal steps are pretty straightforward and set you up perfectly for that next growth phase. First, you and your partners sit down and draft a comprehensive partnership agreement, laying out exactly who does what and who gets what slice of the pie. Then you take that, along with Form I, your CNICs, and proof of address, and submit it all to the local registrar of firms. Once they process it, you get your official certificate of registration. Your new team-up is fully recognized and totally ready to dominate. We have covered a ton of ground today, looking at exactly how businesses are built from the foundation up. From the absolute freedom and raw risk of the sole proprietorship to the robust legal shield of the single-member company, all the way to the combined horsepower of a partnership, the blueprint is in your hands. The structure you choose today is going to define how you grow, how you're taxed, and how you weather the storms tomorrow. So I'm going to leave you with this one final thought to chew on. Which structure are you going to choose to build your empire?